The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, our Lord.
The Pharisees went away to work out between them how to trap Jesus in what he said. And they sent their disciples to him, together with the Herodians, to say, Master, we know that you are an honest man and teach the way of God in an honest way, and that you are not afraid of anyone, because a man's rank means nothing to you. Tell us your opinion then. Is it permissible to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus was aware of their malice and replied, You hypocrites, why do you set this trap for me? Let me see the money you pay the tax with. They handed him a denarius, and he said, Whose head is this? Whose name? Caesar's, they replied. He then said to them, Very well, give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
There's much in that Gospel to think about. This was not just a casual question that Jesus was asked by the Herodians and the Pharisees, but a planned question where they got together to entrap Jesus, and they tried to get him into trouble with either of the civil authorities or the Jewish authorities. It was a no-win situation. It was a question that you couldn't answer. Like the famous barrister's question to the man in the court, have you stopped beating your wife yet? You say yes, well, you used to be beating your wife. And if you say no, you're still beating your wife. So it's a catch-22. Whichever way you answer the question, you're dead. And they knew that. It's interesting that the Herodians and the Pharisees got together. I was trying to explain to myself how I could put that to you. It'd be like if the Latin Mass people and the Charismatics got together and had a conference. Thank you. Somebody got it. I had other ways of putting it, but I was trying to be gentle. You know, there are different factions in our church, in our community. And the Herodians were the ones that were loyal to Caesar. And the Pharisees, by their very name, means separatist. They were the ones that would have nothing to do with Caesar. And this is the only time they ever got together. Strange bedfellows, I can tell you. Right? The only time they ever got together, and they thought they had Jesus cold. There's no way in the wide world he'd be able to get out of this question. Now, people still do that to you today. I will give you an example. The Jehovah's Witness will say to you, why do Catholics worship Mary? The answer is we don't. Don't get into the argument. You're dead. The minute you get into they don't want to know. They want to entrap you. It's an entrapping question by its very nature. So the answer, give them an answer, we don't. Full stop. Next question, please. You know, Jesus is, we've told you before, he answers questions. He wants us to question him. He really wants us to inquire everything we want to know about God, and he's only too pleased to help us if we're sincere. If we want to do it to entrap him, Jesus almost invariably answers the question with a question. And is it true that an Irishman always answers a question with a question? You know what the Irishman said? Who told you that? Who told you that? Yeah, it's a very, very good way of evangelizing, especially if people are antagonistic. Give them back a question to their question if you suspect it's not a sincere question. If it's a really sincere question, then, fine, do your best. But Jesus knew here what they were trying to do, and it's very clear in the gospel. The mere fact that the Herodians and the Pharisees came up together was a sure sign that things weren't going to be too easy for Jesus. He says, "You hypocrites, why do you set this trap for me? Let me see the money that you have." Now, every good Jew knew that you weren't allowed to carry that money because it had on it a graven image. Jesus didn't have the coin on him. He's a good Jew. But the Pharisees still had the coin. Someone had the coin and were able to produce it easily. The minute that Jesus could have said, "Ha, I got you." Huh? But no, give me a coin. Whose image is that? Question. Whose image is that? Caesar. Everybody knew whose image it was. And the beautiful line, "You give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God what belongs to God." It's been the quote of all Christians down through all the ages and all the times. We've got an obligation to our country. We've got an obligation to our government. We've got an obligation to the other citizens of our country. We are not separatists, but we too have, above all else, an obligation to God. I think it's a wonderful gospel to open up something of the mind of Jesus. He is very open to our questions. Don't let the moral of the story be that Jesus doesn't want us to question anything. He just wants us to blindly listen and just do what we're told. No, the Lord loves the searching and the inquiring heart. Our whole Christian theology is based on brilliant minds that have searched the revelation that we've got from God to try and draw us nearer to the face of God, that we may know more and more about God. That's the search of the human heart that will be fulfilled in eternity. But to honor God, to worship the Lord with all our heart and soul and mind and strength, that's the first and the greatest of the commandments that Jesus says to them. Give to God what belongs to God, and to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Amen.